Our next speaker comes from a very impressive family that does everything for the Jewish people, the nation of Israel, so it's no surprise that she herself is a wonderful young woman. She was a wonderful young woman before she left Israel for a gap year. She's even more impressive now. Katriel Camp.
Hello, my name is Katriel Camp, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you today. I would like to share with you some thoughts about my experience as a gap year student who lived in Israel this past year. In the weeks following October 7th, Rabbi Brander, one of our rabbis at Midreshet Lindenbaum, an all-women's seminary in Arnona, Jerusalem, told us that when he visited bereaved families and tried to comfort students whose parents and spouses had been called up for reserve duty, one of the first questions he was always asked was, "Are the Lindenbaum girls staying?" In the immediate aftermath of October 7th, everyone wanted to know if the American students were standing with Israel in her most desperate hour. He told us that he was very proud to answer, yes. To me, it doesn't seem like any remarkable feat to have stayed in Israel this past year. The vast majority of us who stayed had the privilege to serve our local community in any way we could, and those experiences turned out to be profoundly meaningful. After October 7th, we were all reeling from what had happened, and one of our teachers, Cheryl Burnett, started to quote Mr. Rogers to help us find a sense of next steps. Mr. Rogers, our friendly local icon, had found his way to a quiet corner of Jerusalem, thousands of miles away from our neighborhood, here in Squirrel Hill. She quoted him like this: "When I was a boy and I would see scary things on the news, my mother would always say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.'" Our teacher was trying to help us see things from Mr. Rogers' point of view, that we should not feel alone or helpless, because we had a vast support system at Midreshet Lindenbaum. But for me, and many of my peers, we heard the quote differently. We saw ourselves as the helpers the young Fred Rogers looked for when he was in need. Rather than seek comfort, we quickly realized that we could be the ones to provide it. This past year, we were constantly engaging in new volunteering efforts, frequently pivoting to develop different or novel solutions to respond as each need became apparent. For example, in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, many mothers were left alone without their husbands who had been called up for reserve duty and with all of their children home due to school closures. This was the case for almost all of the young families in our neighborhood. We knew they needed help, so we quickly offered our services. In those first few days, the small yards of Arnona were still obstructed by Sukkot that no one had had the time or resources to take down after the holidays were over. So we went from house to house, offering to take down any sukkah. When all of the Sukkot were down, we started babysitting for the families, taking children to the park while the mothers were offered a few spare moments of reprieve. And when we saw that there were more families than we could help individually, we started organizing children's carnivals inside Lindenbaum so that parents could drop their kids off for hours on certain Friday mornings. Our own parents donated money from home so we could rent bounce houses and carnival games and provide lunch for the children. On one occasion, a local pizza shop that would normally close early for Shabbat stayed open beyond its regular Friday hours when they learned that we needed to give the kids lunch. In addition to entertaining the children, we always provided a relaxation room for the moms just to receive a little pampering. We were also deeply moved to be present to help honor those who lost their lives on October 7th and in the war. On October 13th, all of the Lindenbaum students lined our street, waving Israeli flags, along with hundreds of community members, to give final honor to Aner Shapira and his procession as it made its way to Har Herzl. Aner lived across the street from Lindenbaum. And he attended the Nova Festival with his best friend, Hirsch Goldberg. After being killed, Aner saved many lives. Before being killed, Aner saved many lives as he threw Hamas grenade after grenade from the bomb shelter that he, Hirsch, and many others took shelter in when the air raid sirens were first activated. As his procession passed by, we felt a powerful sense of unity mixed with our sadness, to stand shoulder to shoulder with our neighbors and our nation. A month later, we flocked to Har Herzl, along with thousands of American gap year students and Jerusalem residents, to attend the funeral of Rose Lubin, a lone soldier from Atlanta. Many of Rose's friends were serving in Gaza at the time and had no knowledge of her death. The funeral announcement, which called for anyone available to come, requested that people wear bright colors, as Rose always did, to reflect Rose's bright, cheery personality. I attended several such funerals of fallen soldiers along with my fellow students. When we saw that the requests for Army-issued tzitzit were skyrocketing, one of the chief rabbis was asked if women could tie for soldiers. Traditionally, tying tzitzit was a mitzvah only men performed, but with such great need, the rabbi gave women permission to tie. The Lindenbaum girls got to work. On one occasion, after a busy carnival weekend, we hunkered down and tied tzitzit for hours into the night until we had collectively finished nearly 50 garments. We had to make sure they were ready by the morning's pickup time. Our volunteering efforts also included preparing meals for the soldiers' families, sometimes dozens of meals at a time. We became experts at the fine culinary art of crafting the perfect baked ziti and chopping vegetables for garden salad. When we had heard about the farmers' labor crisis, we started volunteering on farms. In the fall, before the trees bore fruit, we pruned plum trees. When the grapefruits were ripe, around Thanksgiving, we climbed up into the trees and picked thousands of grapefruits. In the winter, when the strawberries turned red, we blasted Strawberry Fields Forever and plucked the ruby fruits for hours. And when the oranges became full of bright juices, we picked them before they would fall and bruise in the soil. Around Hanukkah time, we started hearing more about the conditions of the displaced families who had been away from their homes for months and were miserably still stuck in small hotels around the country. We took materials to make Chanukiot to one of the hotels and helped the children while they glued and painted, molded and stickered. These families could not have known that they would be gone from home for so long, and yet there are still so many families who have not been able to go home even now, 268 days later. These are just a few of the innumerable hardships, challenges, disruptions, and sorrows faced by the Israeli people during the past 9 months, in which I am deeply grateful to have been able to contribute my time and energy to help address, along with the rest of my Lindenbaum colleagues, other gap year students, American Jewish volunteers, and indeed the entire Jewish people. I hope these examples give you a sense of how the gap year students quickly mobilized in unprecedented ways in order to help Israel in the war effort. As someone who saw it firsthand, I can say it was incredibly meaningful to see how so many people went above and beyond to help others, usually complete strangers, as only the Jewish people could. Thank you.